how many quarterbacks does Oregon want to take in 2024? It's a pretty legitimate question right now, right? Especially if we're operating on the fact that or on the belief, I should say, that Oregon's in a pretty good spot with Luke Moga. How many quarterbacks do you want to take in the 2024 class? So those are two guys that Oregon's probably in a good spot for right now, but there are some other guys in this class. You got Dylan Raiola out of Pinnacle High School, also in Phoenix. You know, it was looking like he was going to make it out to Oregon for the spring game, you know, probably the headliner in that visit weekend, you know, number one guy in the country. How can you not be the headliner? But there's been some buzz. There's been some reports, I think, some smoke that he may not make it out for that visit anymore. And I'm still working to confirm that, tracks down some info on that. But you got some other big schools in the running with that one. You got USC, Georgia, Nebraska. You guys know the finalists or the top group that he's kind of operating from. So you got Dylan Raiola there. I'm sure Oregon would love to stay involved, and they're going to do everything they can to stay involved. But that's looking like, you know, USC, Georgia, Nebraska, kind of all over the place. You know, the predictions have flip-flopped quite a bit. But aside from Raiola, you got Michael Van Buren. You got and the only other top 150 guy that the Ducks are in the running for, at least, or, you know, kind of on the radar for, is Elijah Brown out of Mater Dei in Santa Ana, Southern California. But the last time that I talked to Elijah Brown, it didn't really seem like Oregon was super involved there. Like the contact was really kind of there that you would think it would be with a top quarterback target. And, you know, Elijah is super low key, you know, from the times that I've talked to him. He's got a really calm demeanor, you know, doesn't love doing recruiting interviews. But, you know, he's I'm fortunate enough that he's given me some of his time when I talk to him, but he always shows up, you know, and I think he's definitely a top quarterback in the country. I just feel like he's a little under recruited because he may not look as physically imposing as some other guys, but he's only lost one game in his high school career. And, you know, some of the schools that are involved there, you got UCLA, USC, Arizona State, I want to say. And then a newer school that's kind of starting to contact him a bit is Ohio State, but they just got Eric Nolan. So I doubt that would be the case for him. But yeah, I mean, like I said, a top heavy class, the only top 150 prospects that Oregon's really in on, if you want to say Dylan Raiola, Michael Van Buren, and then Elijah Brown as well, but the contact hasn't really been there. So then you got Luke Moga, and then you also have Will Hammond. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on out of Texas. He's currently committed to Texas Tech, but maybe the Ducks bring him out for a visit. You know, you all obviously know that Will Stein has some very strong roots in Texas after serving at UTSA as their co-offensive coordinator, I believe it was. So those are kind of some of the names that I feel like we know are in play for Oregon. But let's look at what Oregon football is looking like in 2024, right? You have one more year of Bo Nix in 2023, and then he's going to be done playing college ball, you know, heading to the NFL draft. Ty Thompson's looking like your projected starter for Oregon football in 2024, but he hasn't played a whole lot. He hasn't had consistency at offensive coordinator, right? So that's, I think, a significant hurdle that he's having to overcome in his development. But he hasn't looked great when he's been on the field. You know, I don't want to slam the guy, but that's just the reality of the matter. You know, whatever the circumstances are, the on-field production hasn't looked that great. And he's going to be entering his fourth college season in 2024, right? He came in 2021, redshirted, and then you have 2022, and then 2023. He'll already have 3 years of college under his belt, but probably not a whole lot of playing time unless he's able to get in some, you know, mop-up duty, garbage time this season, which I think he should definitely be able to. But I don't know how confident you are in Thompson as your starter, at least right now, based on what you've seen from him on the field. So he's looking like the main guy right now. And then you also have Austin Novosad from the 2023 recruiting class, right? Comes over from the state of Texas after being a longtime Baylor commit. So that's essentially your scholarship depth now at Oregon. And then if you have, you know, if you can maybe add a guy like Luke Moga or Van Buren. And then you also have Matt Rush on the roster right now, but he's a senior. So and he's a former walk-on. So I would imagine that the Ducks don't want to be in a situation where he has to start, but I like that addition for 2023. So I think that, it's worth asking this question. How many quarterbacks do you want to take if you're Oregon in 2024? The more I think about it, maybe it makes sense to take 2 quarterbacks. Maybe you take, a high school guy, and then maybe you bring in someone from the transfer portal, because that there's going to be guys that hit the portal, that they go to their school and maybe things don't work out. I mean, let's face it. It's a reality of college football. Quarterback goes to a school expecting to start right away, and he doesn't want to sit. So if he goes to his school, goes through a full season and doesn't get that starting job, doesn't see the field, maybe that's where, those past relationships come into play, and kind of favor you, right? Maybe you hit those guys up in the portal, and then you say, hey, come on over to Oregon. I know like things didn't work out there, but we got a pretty sweet deal here. Top O-line recruits, still coming. I think that's a huge thing that Alik Terry obviously has to do. Guys like Brandon Baker have to be an absolute priority. And then you're also getting skill talent. A lot of good receivers that are going to keep coming. You're always going to have good running backs. And then this is a year for Will Stein to prove himself and show that his offense is going to be a hit in Oregon, because he's got a pretty good act to follow up after Kenny Dillingham, really lit this offense on fire in 2022. So I think that it's worth considering taking 2 quarterbacks in the 2024 class, just because you don't really have that depth in that room, and you got to give yourself options. If someone goes down, or if someone transfers, you just got to have some more bodies in that room. And I think that Oregon just doesn't really have those right now. So I think that you would probably want to go, just because it's a very top-heavy quarterback class, you'll probably get 1 prep guy from the high school ranks, and then why not just, kind of leave a spot open for a transfer portal guy? I think that would be a really smart way to go about managing the quarterback position at Oregon. And you talk about a quarterback room and, having too many guys, being crowded. You want to have guys that are going to be able to compete at the end of the day, and that are willing to compete. We got to give Ty Thompson his praise for sticking around Oregon, because it looks like he'll probably have been at Oregon for 3 years before he really gets a super solid shot at that starting job. So credit to him for staying around to compete. I definitely don't want to go without saying that. But in the era of the transfer portal now, quarterback's a 1-year deal. You just got to look at your room on a year-by-year basis. You're going to keep pursuing those guys, those top guys, every year that you can, right? If you have the ability to recruit top tier guys, of course you're going to go after them and ultimately try to get them. But it's hard to look at the quarterback picture beyond just a season at a time, because you can hop in the portal and then have a new guy, have your starter like with Bo Nix, at the drop of a hat. So I think that makes more sense, because you're also just giving yourself the chance of getting a guy who played a lot of college football already, versus, like we've talked about, this is why the portal is affecting high school recruiting. You don't have to worry about developing a guy from the high school ranks. You can just get him from the portal, and then you already have a guy who's more or less a proven commodity and who's played some good college football already before he gets to Oregon. Sipping on a Snapple. I'm not sponsored by Snapple yet, but if you guys watch the show, I love my Snapple. Snapple, sponsor your boy. But yeah, I think that's definitely a reasonable option for Oregon to consider right now and probably pursue. We thought when Will Stein got hired that maybe the Ducks were going to go after Hudson Card because of their connection at Lake Travis High School out there in Texas. So the connections are always going to pop up, right? When you're looking at transfers, you always have to look at how do they connect? Where's that connection? Where's that relationship to the current staff? So I think that's a good option for Oregon in 2024, is to go after a prep guy and go after a transfer portal guy. But it's going to be interesting to see how they juggle that. But we got the significant updates in this episode, as far as just talking about some quarterback dominoes for Oregon.